Have you ever wondered why people play the lottery despite the terrible odds? Or perhaps why we overpay for insurance even when the risks are actually relatively low? It turns out our brains distort probabilities in ways that we don't even realize. And today, in this video, we are going to dive into one of the best models for explaining this, which is Prelac's probability weighting function. Let's play a game. If I flip a coin, you know the probability of heads is exactly 50%. But what if I told you that your odds of winning the lottery are 1 in 10 million? Would you actually perceive that correctly? Probably not. The human brain doesn't process probabilities objectively. Instead, humans tend to overweight tiny probabilities, thinking unlikely events are more likely than they really are, and also underweight large probabilities, treating near certainties as much less certain. And that is exactly what the Prelac function models. Okay, so looking at the Prelac function, it is defined by this formula here, where P is the actual probability, A is the distortion parameter, and B is the scaling parameter. So in essence, we can say that beta controls the elevation, where alpha controls the actual curvature of this probability weighting function. So if we take a look at an actual graph of Prelac's probability weighting function in terms of a general case, you can see here that the dashed line is when WP, the weighting function, is equal to the actual probability P, so there's no distortion, so that's what we typically expect. But then what we actually get is the blue curve, and as you can see, people overweight the small probabilities, and they actually then underweight large probabilities, and this has a lot of consequences in the real world, and also shows that humans do not perceive things perfectly, and we're not perfectly rational in our decision making, and we don't always follow what economists think we might do with any of the models they might create. So now we're going to take a look at a couple of real world examples of this graph actually in action. So let's look at some real world applications. So the lottery is a good example of people overweighting small probabilities. So the odds could be around 1 in 10 million or 1 in 12 or 13 million. But because we overweight the small probabilities, it feels actually the chance we might win is actually a lot higher. And this is why people will spend billions, worldwide on lottery tickets and scratch cards every single year, because people believe actually that they're going to win, or their chance of winning is a lot higher, when actually it is minute and minuscule, and the chances that it's not going to happen. So, and there are of course other examples within investing and the stock market. So people can overreact to tiny chances of a stock market crash, or tiny chances of things occurring based on small little bits in the news. And this means that investors can overweight the small probability of a collapse, and that can lead to people, panicking and selling certain stocks and buying certain things. And that's all down to the bias, and that is what the Prelac function here is trying to demonstrate, that we don't perceive things as we should do a lot of the time, and this can cause irrational human behavior. So to summarize, we've basically discussed why people can make irrational financial, health, and risk decisions, because we overweight the small probabilities and we underweight large probabilities. So this means that we fear the wrong things. We tend to obsess over rare risks but ignore real dangers. We're also willing to overpay for security, such as insurance or warranties. And it also means that people chase improbable rewards, such as lotteries, or putting money into gambling endeavors, which actually are very unlikely. And that is what the Prelac function demonstrates. So I hope you found this somewhat useful and been able to take something away. It's also possible to plot the Prelac function in statistical software such as RStudio. So I could also do something on that in the future, but hopefully you've found something useful and can take something away from this video.